right. We'll go ahead and begin. Thank you everybody for joining today. Super excited to sit down with the team with Trish and Rachel here to kind of discuss some of the changes and challenges and different perspectives in sustainability and tech, and ultimately kind of why we're even talking about this today. So I'm excited to have both of y'all here. Sincerely appreciate you taking the time. I'm Alex Lasser. I'm the founder and CEO of Green Places. We are a sustainability platform built for growing and mid-market companies looking to meet sustainability requirements, whether it's from regulators, investors, and in many cases from some of their largest customers. I'm joined here by Trish and Rachel. Trish, would you like to give a quick introduction?
Sure, thanks. So Trish LaPaglia, thanks everybody for being here. Essentially, I do global workplace and employee experience at Pendo, been there for 9 years, based in Raleigh, North Carolina, but I like to hop around to all of our offices, and I'm just really happy to be here with you.
Great. And Rachel, would you like to give a quick introduction on your side?
Sure. I'm Rachel Henderson. I work at IVP, which is a venture firm based in San Francisco. I've been with the firm for 3 years.
Great. Well, I'm really excited for both of y'all to join. Both of y'all have been early customers of Green Places, so it's been great to kind of see and grow alongside of y'all. And obviously being in the same neck of the woods as Trish, excited to be next to Pendo as well. We're going to start off with a quick poll for folks. Where is your organization currently in its sustainability journey? You know, a lot of businesses today, I would say, are sort of in that first phase of getting started. Maybe they've had some internal conversations. Maybe they've started to form a committee. Some businesses are already starting to do reporting. Sometimes they're collecting data for their first or their second footprint. Some of them are reporting externally or looking for reduction strategies or trying to reach a net zero for themselves. And many of us may not know where we are. So if you wouldn't mind, hop in and we'll leave the poll open for folks to be able to submit a answer to the survey questions. Great. And so we'll let these kind of roll in as we can continue on here. Perfect. So what I wanted to talk first about is I think what's driving this discussion. You know, for the largest companies in the world, the Fortune 500 and Global 1000, these businesses over the last few years have started to make some very serious commitments related to sustainability. And a lot of this is driven from regulation. A lot of this is driven from their own personal brands. But for many of these companies, they have set a standard for reducing their emissions down to zero by 2050. The number of businesses reporting into this has continued to rise and will be expected to cover most of the Fortune 500 over the course of the next couple of years. But what's interesting about that is for a company like Nike or AstraZeneca or Microsoft, when you're looking at it from the perspective of Pendo or an enterprise SaaS company, it may be confusing as to like, why does that matter to me? I may not be big enough to be able to meet one of these regulation thresholds. I'm not a global company. I may not be a public company. So why should I care? Well, the premise of net zero is to reduce your emissions, your total emissions, down to zero. And what's surprising for a lot of folks is about 90 to 93% of most Fortune 500 companies' emissions are their suppliers. So about 90% of Microsoft's emissions are not Microsoft's operational stuff themselves. It's all of their suppliers, packaging companies, software companies, vendors, law firms, insurance companies. It's everything that builds up into making Microsoft what it is. The same thing is true in the pharmaceutical world. So about 90% of AstraZeneca's carbon footprint lives in its scope 3, and much of that is in their supply chain. So in order for an enterprise to reach its net zero commitment, it is paramount for them to actually engage all their suppliers in doing it. They truly cannot get there unless their suppliers do. And that's why if you dig into these sustainability plans and these net zero goals, They say, we are going to require our suppliers to meet us on this journey. So if you're a supplier, if you sell software to most of the Fortune 500, you're going to be required to report emissions and in many cases report reductions to be able to continue to work together. And for them, they're looking for either their current suppliers to meet this or identify new suppliers that don't. And again, it doesn't matter if you're making a manufactured product or not, you still add up into that number, and that's what makes it so important. On the investor side of things, the global investment community, particularly those driving from sovereign wealth funds internationally, driving from educational endowments, pension funds, have started to prioritize sustainability in the way that they invest in funds as well. And what that's done is that's encouraged most of the large private equity companies and many venture capital companies too, to be able to prioritize this, to be able to meet the expectations of their investors. And I think for a lot of us, when we think about sustainability, it can feel a little bit politically charged. But the reality is, for a lot of these investors, they view not having these sustainable metrics in place as an inherent risk to the business. And depending on what type of investment that is, kind of changes the risk profile of that. But again, if you were to invest in an enterprise SaaS company, knowing that 50 to 60% of the largest companies in the US require sustainability as part of their RFP process, if those businesses they're investing in are not meeting that reporting requirements, they're closing off the market opportunity. And so these things have a real financial concern to it. It's not political. It's not charged outside of the initial investment thesis. And it's one of the reasons we're seeing more and more and more people require this of their portfolio companies. And again, if you're investing in businesses, you want to make sure that they have the best chance for success. And so to be able to make sure that your portfolio companies' investments are actually meeting these targets is a really attractive thing. And if you're a software company looking for investment, this is absolutely something you don't want to be disqualified for. And so there's a couple reasons why we're here. When we think about sustainability as a reporting requirement, it reminds me a lot of the way that SOC 2 and security compliance has kind of made it into the mainstream cost of doing business for a software company. And what's driving that are basically two main forces. The first is going to be the supplier-led requirement. This is where, again, 60, 70% of the Fortune 500 has supplier requirements in place to be able to require their customers and vendors to report emissions. So if you sell to Apple, if you sell to Walmart, if you sell to Dell, if you sell to Cisco, you're having to report emissions to these folks through questionnaires. The second is regulatory frameworks, and the regulation in sustainability has really evolved a lot over time. There has been lots of historical regulation in Europe. So if you're a business that serves European customers, you're going to see this a whole lot. There's regulation in Scandinavia, in the UK, Latin America, Asia Pacific that's driving that. But the most important of these regulations is coming through California through a bill called SB 253 and 261. Essentially, what that means is any business in California that does business in California, you don't have to be headquartered there, but meets a revenue threshold of about $1 billion, is going to be required starting in January to report their emissions. And if you are at that threshold, you'll be required. But if you sell to people in that threshold, you're more than likely to be required. So what's happening here is the combination of the customer or enterprise-led requirements and the regulatory requirements is making this something that most businesses in B2B would have already seen multiple questionnaires, answers in RFPs, security requirements related to sustainability. And we would expect that to continue to go forward, especially as these things are all growing really quickly. And with California's law coming into place early next year, this will become something that likely will be as ubiquitous as SOC 2 compliance. So one way to be able to kind of identify where these drivers are coming from, I like to have these webinars with a good takeaway that you can kind of bring back to your team. Again, I think a lot of folks sort of understand sustainability as this is something that's important to us, it's important to our employees, and it absolutely is. But it's hard to get that business case. So what you can do is you can look at your largest companies that you work for, so the largest clients that you have, and search for a supplier code of conduct, search for responsible sourcing, search for sustainability reporting guidelines, things like that. And what you'll find in those websites is pretty clear instructions for what sorts of things they require of their suppliers. And within that, you'll be able to see if there's a sustainability or carbon or GHG requirement of suppliers and how that kind of changes in the future. We can help with this too. So this is an easy way if you have questions about customers and people that you want to work with. We've got databases with over thousands of these types of supplier codes of conduct that have been pulled out to be able to make sure that our clients understand exactly what they would be subject to. But this is where it would live. And it's a good way to kind of come home from this and say, I wonder if the people that we sell to actually have this stuff too. Again, I think the way to sort of think about this is, software companies, I think it's common to feel like I don't manufacture something, so why does this matter to me? The reason it does is to calculate a net zero target. The software company is included in that. And so again, whether you manufacture something or not, whether you believe in this stuff, or not, is not necessarily is not necessarily matter. You're gonna have to do it, and if you want to sell to the enterprise, this is a critical component to doing that. I also think it's easy to kind of get drowned into the risk of things, but like this is such a good opportunity. I mean, very rarely I think do you get to do something that I think has a good outcome and a good business outcome, and this is definitely one of those things. If you're going to go down the sustainability journey and start to build out your carbon footprint, measure, report, start to figure out how you reduce, you have an opportunity, a unique one, I think, over the last 10 years to be able to win more share of wallet from your top customers. You have an opportunity to be able to uproot a competitor who may not be doing this today. Again, because for these large companies, they're looking to de-risk and reduce the emissions in their supply chain. And by having this, you become a more attractive supplier. I think for a lot of companies, again, sustainability sometimes starts in the conversation of like, this is something that our internal employees care about, which they absolutely do. But I think what gets lost a lot of times is the real business value for this. And again, if you have an opportunity to do something that makes you a more attractive supplier, it's well worth doing it, especially if you're selling into the enterprise. Great. So what we're going to do from here is go through some questions for our panel here. So again, very excited, Rachel and Trish, for y'all to be here. I think both of y'all have such a unique perspective. Rachel on the investor side of things, Trish building an amazing software company, but really, I think sort of seeing the evolution of this is I think Pendo was a customer that really bought into this, I think, early as an internal thing, and it's now started to be something that you're seeing more with your customers. So I think my first question here, is sustainability journeys often begin for different reasons for companies. Rachel, what initially prompted IVP to think about sustainability? Was it driven more from internal values or more from external pressure?
I would say it was definitely a mix of both. The VC markets are definitely on a little bit of a lag relative to US public markets and Europe. So we started thinking about it probably earlier than most in 2011. And we decided to make a policy and base our practice on 3 different words: impactful, authentic, and practical. So we apply that at the our firm level, and with our portfolio companies. And then in 2020, as we evolved our practice, we started measuring our footprint with you guys. And I think Similar to our portfolio companies, we have external stakeholders, that being our LPs, and they care about the systemic risk in their portfolio, and that includes our sustainability and ESG. So we get questions from them, and we understand that our portfolio companies will likely be against the public markets at some point, hopefully, and that comes with regulations, which you highlighted. So I would say it's a little bit of both.
Mhm. And Trish, how did Pendo, initially get started in sustainability? Was there like an employee resource group that worked internally or a cross-functional committee? Like who really owned this at the start and how has that evolved as Pendo has grown?
Sure. So as you said, we've got employees that care very strongly about sustainability targets and sustainability in their communities. So we do have those folks who like to voice their thoughts and opinions and feelings about how we participate in some of these activities. And then it's also really important to our CEO. So I think you guys have a relationship. He's the one that started talking about this to begin with. And so I think the point there is that, yes, you can have ERGs that care about this particular topic and issue. But until you get that C-level or executive buy-in, the chances of doing something at a much larger scale are a little slim. But that's how we started, and it's been an interesting journey over the last couple of years for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point because I think, a lot of companies, particularly in the employee side of things, it's hard to understand why this could be something that's important to a lot of us, but isn't a business decision yet. And so I think it's that path to connecting the dots between the business objective, whether that's raising more money, going public, selling customers, whatever it might be, to really unlock this as something that the company is going to do. I think caring about it a lot of times just isn't enough to be able to get this to be something that's accepted and driven. And I think a lot of the market pressure is going to really help to force that anyway over the next year or two. But I think you're exactly right. It's got to be something that has like a real business outcome. Otherwise it can be something that's important, but we don't really go fully into it, until those things are connected. And I think that was definitely something that was really clear at Pendo. Um, Trish, sustainability initiatives can come with very unique challenges. What's been the biggest roadblock or mistake, that maybe y'all face in the early stages of your efforts, and what sorts of things did you overcome? And as a small part too to that, what do you know about the carbon accounting process now that, you wish you would have known when you got started?
Um, a lot more. I know a lot more now than I did when we first started. I think I was very green, no pun intended, when we began this journey. Um, I think the biggest, not necessarily learning that we got from this whole process was that we don't have a dedicated resource to focus solely on this project, in addition to some of the other conservation efforts we might like to. So the carbon tracking falls into my wheelhouse, kind of by default, but I also do this work in conjunction with someone on our legal team, someone on our learning and development, DEI and recruiting team. I also work with some of the other employee engagement office managers, and then I also work with finance. I'm probably the pushiest, so I'm the one that kind of spearheads and asks all the questions, but I have 4 other jobs that I have to do. So not having a dedicated resource was probably the biggest learning. The second thing I would say is that from the accounting side, if we had known specifics about how we needed to track certain things, we might have set up our accounting buckets a little differently. So before you start down this road, I think getting a better handle on what it is, what data you're going to be asked for, and then see what translates in terms of the way your finance team is tracking all of that spend, all of the scope 3 that you talk about, would be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Makes total sense. And I think a lot of people, particularly in growing companies, experience that sort of like who owns this challenge. And it's understandable why. If you're Nike, like you have like 20 or 30 people who do this. If you're a supplier or service provider, it's hard to like build out that team. And so that's what makes it such a challenge. And one of the things that we see a lot of times is, it's somebody in an executive role, whether it's overseeing operations, HR. A lot of times we see more on the general counsel and finance led folks, because I think a lot of this type of stuff ends up falling kind of back into those more like heavier compliance related things around business risk, and particularly around the company information. Trish, to come back to you on this, for software companies, there's obviously like a ton of unique challenges around sustainability without like a large physical footprint. How do you feel like y'all approach sustainability differently when compared to like, other industries with more tangible environmental impacts, like a manufacturer, for example?
Sure. As I said, this is what I would consider the early part of this journey. So we're making small decisions every day in terms of how we can be conservative with the resources that we use. And so if you're bundling a trip to see a couple different customers at one time, that's one thing we can do. Obviously, the carbon footprint tracking is an obvious thing that we're doing to kind of figure out where we stand with all of this. But then other simple things within our offices, we make sure that we have compost, we make sure that we use compostable resources. Like I said, bundling trips. So what are the other things that don't necessarily fall into the reporting bucket, but are intentional choices that we can make at a much smaller level that kind of affect the folks in each of those offices? I think the other good example is, our Sheffield office is really great about cycling to work. And so we participate in the Cycle to Work scheme for both the London and the Sheffield office. And that's one of the other small things that we can do for both of those places.
Makes sense. And Rachel, for VCs like IVP, how does your portfolio approach sustainability different compared to other industries?
I think it's a little different because the stage that we invest in, we don't have regulations per se for our portfolio companies, but that doesn't mean it isn't important. And I think it goes back to like, who are your stakeholders? And I think your stakeholders will have expectations for you to be more ESG friendly, or like you were talking about down the supply chain, there may be requirements that come with that. And I think we have our LPs that are concerned about the sustainability of our business and our portfolio. So it comes in to both. And I think at the firm level, we have goals that we set, similar to what Trish was talking about. And we base those goals basically off our carbon footprint and where we can focus on being more sustainable as a business based on where we are emitting the most. But I think for our companies, they're a bit earlier stage and maybe not measuring their footprint yet.
And I know, Rachel, you'd mentioned seeing requests sometimes from limited partners, the folks that invest in IVP, to report on sustainability. Have you seen the nature or origin or even volume of those requests change in the last year or so?
I wouldn't say it's sometimes. I would say it's a lot of the time that we get these requests. The volume has definitely increased recently. And I think something we're seeing is it's not just a checkbox exercise anymore. This is something that's core to their diligence process when they're evaluating IVP as a manager. I think one positive thing is as it becomes more popular, it becomes a little bit more standardized. So now when we get a questionnaire, it probably has a lot of overlap with another questionnaire, which for me is less work when I'm doing my job. But I think to like put it in perspective, I went to lunch with an LP recently and we were just like talking about the importance of ESG and sustainability in the portfolio. And he was saying that they're pretty much at the point that if VC manager isn't doing ESG, that may be enough for them to consider not working or investing in that manager. So I think at this point, because it is more standardized, the bar is relatively low to get started. And it's something that our LPs care a lot about. And we actually worked on a series of what we call junk guides at IVP. It's like a piece of content. But basically the low-hanging fruit that our portfolio companies can consider when they're starting their journey. So those are on our website.
Makes sense. We had one question that came in of what is an LP or a limited partner?
Great question. I probably should have said that. LP stands for limited partner. It is the clients essentially that invest in our fund. So VC, there is the general partners that invest the fund and the limited partners who provide the capital that we invest.
So these are the folks, like a lot of times they're endowments, they might be big pension funds, they're big pools of capital of money, and they'll give them to fund managers at venture capital funds and private equity funds, and a lot of times they'll include, as Rachel mentioned, what they kind of expect you to do with that, whether it's to drive returns, invest in certain types of businesses, or not invest in certain types of businesses. And what's interesting is a lot of large limited partners, these are big pools of money. They will dedicate those across lots of different investment types. So the same person that might invest in Blackstone also might, like a big private equity company, also might invest in a venture capital fund. And they have those same sorts of requirement and asks kind of across the board. And that's one of the reasons why you see this stuff move into venture capital too.
And as we have limited partners based in Europe, we see requests from them a lot as well.
Rachel, any lessons learned in responding to those requests, and kind of going through this exercise and measuring your footprint?
I think both of them require work. I think what on the carbon footprint side, Trish was talking about hiring someone or like having a dedicated person to do that. I am the dedicated person that is collecting the data or pinging other teams to collect the data here at IVP. And I think one thing I've learned is just like trying to make a process around it or make it a little bit more formalized to make it easier. And like an example of that is like we're a little bit more intentional of how we code our flights in our expense software. And that makes it easier at the end of the year to have more primary data when we're looking at our business travel. So.
It makes a lot of sense. I think planning ahead, and understanding a lot of times when we work with people, the first time they do this exercise, it's kind of eye-opening of like, where does that data live? And in year 2 and year 3 and year 4, you can say, okay, I know that's where that is. So maybe we code things differently, or we look at things differently, or we put some things in place to be able to do it. So that makes a ton of sense. Rachel, last kind of question before kind of jumping back to Trish, but what are some of the ways that the IVP team assesses ESG within your portfolio, and encourages these portfolio companies to think about sustainability? And how do you see that, that process roadmap like developing in the future?
Totally. We don't view ESG as like this separate silo. It's just another risk that we will assess when looking at a new investment. So we include it in our process when we're doing due diligence. And then the next step of that would be when we do have a new investment, we send a survey on ESG. It's pretty simple. It takes about 10 minutes. And then that gives us kind of like it opens the door for us to have a conversation during the onboarding session with a new company about potential areas that we could partner with them or be helpful. And then as we had to start somewhere, it was our carbon footprint, and we've evolved with how we've collected data, and year over year we end up providing more primary data, and that was a earlier part in our journey. And then this year, because of what we've learned in our portfolio or in our carbon footprint, we've decided to try to improve our data collection from our portfolio companies, because that's somewhere where I think we're still estimating when it comes to scope 3. So our goal this year, just based on past carbon footprints, is to collect data from all of our portfolio companies, not just new investments. And then we'll have a better baseline understanding of, where we stand today and where they stand, and if there's any way we can be more intentional partners with them.
Makes total sense. So since we're at the 30-minute mark, I thought we would jump into some of the questions that have come in. So I'll pick these in no particular order, but Trish and Rachel, feel free to chime in as well. The first question was, can the panel share how sustainability is playing into day-to-day financial decisions? For example, many companies are budget constrained, and sustainable purchase options often can come at a higher cost. Just kind of curious to understand the balancing act there.
Yeah, I'll actually jump in on this one. So we work with 3G1 Coffee, and I just had this conversation with their CEO and one of their co-founders. And I'm going to take coffee cups as a perfect example, right? The sustainable, compostable coffee cups cost more than your regular run-of-the-mill styrofoam coffee cup. And they decided that the kind of business they wanted to be from the very get-go was someone who supported sustainability in all of their decisions. So they intentionally made that decision from the very beginning to spend a little bit more on that. Does that affect the way all of their other line items fall into play? Absolutely. So I think that leadership has to have a very clear vision on what type of company they want to be. Again, that's a balancing act and it's different for everyone. But again, having that C-suite leadership buy-in for whatever your choices are afterward is really, really important.
Mm-hmm. That makes total sense. And we, like, I think sometimes I think if sustainability is purely sort of viewed as like a cost, I think it's really hard to kind of get this across sometimes. But I think that companies that I've seen do this really well, they're able to look at it on both sides because you're right. In many cases, it can be more expensive to choose a more sustainable option. But in many cases, being more sustainable means you use less resources too. We've had plenty of companies when they're looking at their power contracts or their offices and the space they have, and they start to look at it from, do we need to fly, 20 times to New York last year for one meeting a piece, or could we knock that out in one? I think the definition of sustainability is providing more value, with less resources, not less value with less resources. So, I think a lot of the way that we kind of operate, you can kind of weigh these different things based on, what's typically a financial metric of like, is this a profitable choice? I think you can do the same thing by adding in some of the sustainability pieces. One question that came in as well was, can you share some examples of the most impactful changes you've made to operations or investments based on the data you're collecting and reporting?
We haven't made this change yet, but it's something we're thinking about because we are traveling all over the world looking at investments or meeting with LPs. Our business travel is a large portion of our carbon footprint. I think something that we are thinking about, and like you mentioned, it's also a cost saving, is how we can reduce our business travel, and then a byproduct of that is saving money for the company.
There's two questions that came in related to supplier information. For a lot of companies, a large portion of their emissions comes from their suppliers. So all the people they purchase things from, like one of Greenplace's largest emissions categories is our professional services budget. It's what we spend on law firms and accounting firms and all that kind of stuff. And one of the challenges of reducing your emissions and most of it being outside of your individual control is like, what do you do to be able to solve for that? There was a second question here that was asking around like, how would you know information about your suppliers if you don't get the information directly from them? So the best practice for both of these things is to create you can think about it as a supplier code of conduct or some practices that you would like to ask your suppliers and vendors to report to you on. And this is the same reason that a lot of us are reporting, but it's basically saying, we would like our suppliers to the best of their abilities to give us, carbon emissions, maybe give us information around some policies that are important to us. And we just want you to simply respond to the survey. This gives suppliers a chance to be able to report back into you where they are at on things, and that can give you more information around how you make decisions from there. But there's also a number of databases that you can use to be able to pull this in. And Greenplaces uses AI and a number of databases that we have access to be able to scrape websites, to scan different databases that could indicate that this business has set a net zero target, for example, or is reported to CDP, or lists sustainability policies or best practices on their site or their different resources, and actually pull that information in to kind of power a first pass of that database. You still want someone to be able to reply to you and give you the information directly, but there are tools, including Green Places, that can be there to kind of help you set those supplier standards that make sense for your business, and fill out a database even prior to actually reaching out to them to be able to understand where they are. One question that I see here is, how do we shift a leader's perspective on sustainable products as a niche offering for more advanced customers to a more central part of our value proposition? So how do we sort of bring this into like who we are? I'm curious, Trish or Rachel, if y'all have any perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've already beat the drum on executive buy-in. What I would say, there's the qualitative piece to ESG and reporting, right? You've got the data pieces, and that's very scientific and it's very numbers driven, and that's great. But the other thing that I think it's possible to lean into is, how does your employee base feel about this? Is it something that you're using from an internal marketing standpoint, an external marketing standpoint, in terms of attracting and also retaining the employees that you want to have work at your business to contribute to the culture that you want to have at your business? So there's that piece of it. There's also the story that you tell publicly, in addition to, our carbon footprint is X, Y, and Z, and we're going to be net zero by 2025. What is the story that you tell externally in all of your marketing materials as to how your company thinks about this? What are the steps they're taking? Again, even some of them that aren't necessarily being reported. And then what's your aspirational vision for where you want to end up? And I think outside of the official formal reporting that you end up having to do for a lot of these enterprise level RFPs, the storyline that you thread through all of your conversations with those folks when you're having these sales moments, right? There's a definite return on investment on being able to tell that story. And so what I said to some of the folks yesterday is that from your executive leadership team, you need to make sure that you're having relationship deposits all along the way, so that when you need to make a withdrawal and ask them to either lean in on something or help you craft this messaging, you can make that withdrawal from all of the deposits that you've made earlier, and they can actually support you in some of the things that you want to do. So just play the long game, I guess, is the best way to say that.
I think that's really sound advice. And I think like we always talk about, like, most businesses that are starting to do this today, they have a business goal of like being a more attractive supplier, selling more deals, increasing their share of wallet. They may not have like a sustainability goal. And so I think what I always tell folks is like, you've got to make sustainability a way to be able to solve a business goal. That's how a CEO is going to think. And I think, meeting the footprint and reporting requirements, of most of the largest companies in the world will make you a more valuable supplier. It makes you a more attractive supplier. And I think that's probably the way that I tend to go to folks to start to talk about the message is, if we do this, we're going to be able to build more relationships and grow our business. And I think bringing it into that core message is a lot more effective sometimes than just saying, this is something I really care about. Can we do it? But it takes that like extra step of making like the connection between our core business, which, maybe to sell more software subscriptions, maybe to raise more money, invest more capital, grow more capital. You've got to pull sustainability as, if I do this, it's going to help me achieve those things better too. I think we probably have time for one more question. And this one is related as a follow-up to Trish. How frequently are RFPs mentioning sustainability for y'all? And do you have like a process for like how you answer those things?
I would say more frequently than they were 2 years ago, for sure. As far as a process, we've, like Rachel was saying, some of the questions are the same. So we have Confluence page and a doc that pretty much gives our reps an answer for the more generic things that they get. And then we point them back to our Green Places reports. Until there's somebody who actually owns it, I don't know if the process will get more streamlined. Some days it feels like you just throw the question into a general Slack thread and we group answer it, because this isn't the first time we've probably been asked that question. My goal for next year is to have a more robust intranet page where we can list all these things, point people to the exact same resources, and kind of streamline it that way. But to answer your first question, way more often than we did before.
That's great. Cool. Well, I want to thank both of y'all very much for taking the time to chat. I know we got through most of the questions, but for the folks that we didn't get to it specifically, we will we'll respond back to you and get those things answered too. And then you're more than welcome to reach out to any of us if you have questions about anything you heard today or follow-ups on things. And we appreciate you taking the time to join. And Trish and Rachel, thank y'all for your perspectives. I think it was really helpful. We'll send out a recording of this to everybody, but thank you for your time today, and hope everybody has a great Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Rachel.